Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. We're here with guest host, Jenn Gaudette, who comes from a bit of an interesting background where she started in kind of the environmental sciences, HR, and then a personal trainer. And now she's a career success coach or wellness coach. And happy to have you here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? And then we'll go into your background and your backstory.
Sure. So what I'm doing now is I'm a unique kind of career coach, essentially. So I take my health coaching background and I combine it with career coaching. So what that means is, and the name of my company is Work Sapien. And so I'm all about working in a human way. So that means honoring all of our limits, all of our potential, and all of the things that make us human and make us unique. So that usually means developing really healthy work habits, doing the work that you love and that reflects who you are, and then just generally kind of getting clarity about what you're doing, where you are, and being good with where you are and what you want to do. So I work at I always say I work at the intersection of health and career.
That's awesome. So I'd love to kind of step back and learn a little bit more of Jenn as a kid. So growing up, I know you've had a career in figure skating and doing some stuff there, but what are some of the other things, and how did things like the environmental sciences, like physical health and HR and all the stuff that you're doing now, how did those kind of factor into those journey and lead you up to where you are right now?
Yeah, so that is the question, because I love this. It really is. Our whole lives are a career, and I love how you just referred to my figure skating career, because I really didn't see it that way at the time. I just saw it as like a sport that I really loved, an artistic sport. So I guess as a kid, I was very serious. I'm told. I have no recollection of this, but I'm told I was a very serious kid who. Who was just kind of very introverted, but, also really kind of passionate about being active and activity. So that, I think early on, my parents saw that, put me into skating, around 5-6 years old, and I loved it. I also did precision skating, which is team skating, which I also love because that's been a value of mine, a fitness community. Sort of that idea of being active with others.
Right.
And then I also did ballet for a couple of years. So the artistic kind of sport was the theme of my childhood, and I very much put my focus there. And it gave me a sense of community, and it also took me away. I like to say this: it took me away from the stuff that like the social politics of school and, like things like that. So I am very much encouraging my daughter to take gymnastics as far as she would like to go for that reason, is because it really is it's an outlet, it's a confidence builder as well.
Okay.
So that's kind of where my values around, fitness and community and self-expression kind of were born.
Okay.
And then, so I'll try and do the shorter version of this, because it's a long and winding road. So essentially, the way that throughout my teens, I wasn't particularly there wasn't anything in particular that stood out to me in terms of subjects. I remember really liking learning how to juggle in drama, like things like that. There were like these little highlights, but they generally didn't have a lot to do with a specific path so it wasn't clear to me until I worked one summer for Greenpeace canvassing.
Okay.
A friend of mine was doing it. It was in Windsor, Ontario. We did door-to-door canvassing, and I found a passion in having these conversations with people, and that led me to my choice to go to select environmental studies as my path, as my for university. So I applied to a bunch of programs, and that happened quickly.
Mm-hmm.
that fast forward, I have a 12-year career in the environmental field, which was very much mission focused. I worked for a lot of not-for-profits. I did a little work in other organizations as well. But the idea here was that what I focused on was, how can we change people's minds about behavior, and how can they make better choices, and how can we encourage behavior change? Because ultimately, that's what we're after, right?
Sure.
With the environment, it's all about behavior change. We as humans need to see and act differently than we currently do. Obviously, we're seeing climate change and how real it is right now. So at some point there, though, there was another turning point, and I realized that, like, towards the end of that career, I had there were some, it just kind of wasn't, I didn't feel that I was growing. I didn't feel that it was as much a reflection of who I was. And I noticed that I was really interested in the dynamics and sort of the social and the experience of work. And so I was constantly observing and sort of having conversations about, the organization itself and the way people were enjoying their work, and how we can, be more empowered as to do this work. Anyway, that led me to HR. And I did have a turning point as well around that time, where I had what I was trying to, like, sort of deciding what I was going to do. I went to see a career counselor, and the career counselor just suggested to me what she said, well, I guess after we went through a whole list of things, like, I had done this, I had done the work. I was like, I don't know what it is. What is next? I really felt that. And when people come to me, they feel the same way a lot of times. And so she said, well, you could start your own business. And I don't know, that landed in a way that, like, just kind of blew my mind. I was like, I could. That kind of solves all I was a single mother at the time. I had, I needed flexibility. I was trying to figure out how all the pieces are going to fit together in this new career, and how I was going to make this change. And ultimately, I ended up starting a workplace wellness business, and doing my HR diploma at the same time. So fast forward again, now I'm back in the environmental field, working full circle, Greenpeace again, in HR this time. And I had another turning point where I was just like, it was not right. The job was not me. It was, I thought, okay, well, I have all these pieces together. I was even creating these wellness and meditation programs for staff. Like, I was just bringing as much of that as I could.
Right.
It was not right. So I one day I remember having, like, clearly, like, having a kind of the revelation, I'm going to go get my health coaching certification. That's it. And I'm going to do what I want to really truly do. And I knew it in my heart, I knew what I wanted to truly do. And just I didn't just need that one experience to kind of, like, launch me in that direction I've been coaching ever since. And that, it led me to I realized a lot of my health coaching conversations had a lot to do with career. And so as I navigated that, I built some career coaching into my health coaching initially, and now I've flipped it, and I'm reversed, sort of building health coaching into career coaching. So doing a lot more work, helping people find jobs, helping people make changes, helping people be healthier in the careers that they have, and leading with the career piece. So it's all very much been a process of uncovering clues and trial and error and career exploration to the max. and really where I am now feels like that the culmination of all of that work to kind of find where I'm most leveraging my superpowers the most and really aligned with my values the most.
That's amazing. So thanks for sharing the journey. And I'd love to kind of head back to a few of those key moments and talk a little bit about some of the influences that were there. So in your early kind of skating and ballet days, that sounds like it was really like mom and dad kind of focus, like, hey, you should do this. And were there a lot of, like, conscious decisions on your part to say, like, no, mom, I want to go into ballet? Or was it more like they said, hey, you are pretty good, let's do that? Or Just want to walk through
Yeah,
some
I
of those
think
things.
that it was all about, it was originally my coach
Okay.
saying that I would benefit from ballet because the solos that we did had a lot of ballet artistry kind of arms and things like that. So it was meant to, initially it was meant to support my skating, and then eventually if you get too deep into the ballet then they make you choose.
Okay.
I chose skating. And so yeah, I think it was really all about like my parents were very much do whatever,
Okay.
do what you want, and they kept me, and they saw that I was very passionate about it, and so they supported me in it, but without being highly there are some accounts of some very highly aggressive skating parents.
Sure.
They were not like that. They were very, sort of, they'd take me to the competitions, they'd, be in the stands and support me, but they were definitely not trying to kind of steer me in any particular direction. It was just kind of, take it as far as you can. And I took it right up to the age of 16, which was kind of a natural end. Because at that point I just kind of aged out in a way.
Well, would there have been kind of like a next step that you could have continued? Because there are people skating past 16. Right?
There are, yeah. Well, in the competitive with coaching and the schedule that I was, I think
Okay.
at that age you're a teenager, right? And other things start to become like friends and socializing and that kind of thing started to compete in
Sure.
terms of priorities. So I think that's kind of how it went.
Cool. So and about when did you have that kind of that Greenpeace canvassing experience? So would have been after that
So,
moment, or like
yeah, so right after, I actually did some dance in the meantime too. So there
okay.
was some dance involved in like sporadically, so another artistic sport.
Yep.
Where I moved into kind of like from skating, I picked up modern dance and
Hmm.
moved into that. And from 16 to 18, I was dancing, and I had summer jobs and things like that. So I was always working. That was another
Okay.
thing of my childhood. And that was my choice. My parents did not say you need to go get a job. I went and got myself a job at Dairy Queen the second that I was old enough. I was like, I'm ready,
Sure.
independence. And so that's around I kind of, it was another summer job essentially around the age of 17 because I went to university when I was 18. So around that time, 17, 18, I started to make some decisions about what I wanted. But I really felt like I just went with the flow up until that point and
Okay.
really just kind of was exploring my interests and didn't really have a clear path at all.
Cool. So you were going through and you had this drive to get a job like on your own. Can you describe that a little bit? Like, where did that come from? Was that something that you were always
Yeah.
independent and you want to do that, or just
One of my,
where did that
I
come
think
from?
one of my strengths and strength finder is responsibility.
Okay.
Um, so I think it's a value and a strength in the sense that independence was also a big piece of the puzzle. So
Okay.
I think that as soon as I realized what independence meant, I had my license at 3 months after my 16th birthday.
Okay.
This is when we could do that.
Yeah.
And I think I just really valued sort of maturing and starting my own life, and kind of creating an identity separate from that of my household and my parents. I think that early on, that's really what I wanted to do, and having income was a big part of that, of my own income. And so I worked in so many different jobs.
Yeah.
I worked at a hardware store. I worked at a coffee shop. I worked at a garden center, a bakery. All of it. I did so many different jobs when I was during my teens, and in summers, and then also in university. I worked at the library. So many different jobs.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with folks, and for some reason, a lot of folks who really spent that time to have the jobs when they're younger, right? Like not the co-op or like the jobs in university or whatever, but in like high school and earlier. Those are the ones that have like a different sense of independence, responsibility that help them in acclimatizing to the real world, right? So some of the feedback has been that you should try to get a job as early as you can, basically, whether it be in a coffee shop, a hardware store, or whatever. So that kind of just speaks to some of the variety of experiences you can have, and probably a lot of the learnings you can have, probably on the soft skills in terms of like time management, showing up on time, and how to talk and communicate and deal with people. It's kind of a preschool, right? A different sort of university or pre-university where you get a different sort of real world education. So that often speaks to that responsibility. But I'd love to chat a little bit more about that environmental experience where like, so you found kind of a love of Greenpeace. It was kind of very mission oriented. And then how, like, what were the best parts and highlights of that? And then how did you kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of like fall out of love of it, right?
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's the strangest thing, like who leaves the environmental sector, right?
Sure.
When the need is so high. And I remember people used to say, are you still trying to save the world? Like it was, it's just like, I guess that's what I'm doing. I didn't see it that way.
Sure.
But yeah, so I guess it was really, I mean, I wasn't seeing the alignment with my effort and the change that I was after. So I was, I felt like I was, the impact that I was having is very small.
Right.
And just within the context of the programs that, whether it was Go Solar, which is a program I ran with residential solar, it was a lot of renewable energy programs and things like that. It was just the early dawn of the renewable energy sector in Canada. So yeah, I felt like my role wasn't big enough. I think that was the biggest feeling. It was just that I was kind of stagnating in terms of my personal experience of work. It wasn't, I wanted to continue to have an impact, and I truly believed in, the work that we were doing and how important it was to do, but the mission alignment, I wasn't seeing the path. That was no longer motivating me. It was, as initially, I think that was a big motivator for like up to 10 years. I was motivated I felt that mission alignment. I was aligned with the mission, and therefore what I was doing was, was clear. But then I started to kind of feel like our approach and maybe some of the programs and the way we were doing things in various organizations just wasn't aligned anymore. I don't know how else to say it. It was that I needed to do more and be more, ultimately, was the feeling.
Cool. So you had this feeling of wanting to do more, and then somehow kind of HR decide to fill in the void and say, hey, this is how I would do that. Talk to us a little bit about kind of that decision-making process, or like how did you come up with that, and what were the signs that pointed you in that direction?
Yeah. So I quickly realized that if you're not happy at work, the impact that you're going to have and the sustainability of your work, the work itself is not going to be there, and you're going to burn out. You're going to stop anyway. And so I saw the fact that I remember having this conversation, one of my exit interviews with HR. It's just like, we need to have sustainability within our own lives, and we need to be out of survival mode ourselves in order to do this, in order to really truly care about the environment, truly change our behaviors. If we're in survival mode, just kind of making ends meet, and if we're not, and even in a kind of an earning potential kind of context, right? Like if we're not earning enough, we're not growing enough within the context of our roles, then we're not, as whether we're employees or whether we're talking to the people what we're trying to affect or trying to influence in terms of the way that they're behaving. If everybody's in survival mode, it is really tough to influence change. It's really tough to care about anything outside of your little bubble, because your little bubble is just barely together, and so I think was part of it, is that I saw it as a foundation for doing work that is meaningful in the world. And if you've got to kind of feel energized, and you've got to be well, and you've got to thrive to a certain extent within the context of the work that you do in order to do the work that needs to be done sustainably. So it all sort of framed around the sustainability as a theme. It's like, if it doesn't feel like we can keep going, then we're not, just as humans, going to be able to do a whole lot more, because we're digging out of a reserve that is depleted ultimately. And that's a metaphor that works on both levels. Just made that up. Yeah.
Yeah. You can incorporate that into your marketing material later on.
Yeah. I guess.
No,
we have a recording.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing. So it seems like that sustainability is that common theme in terms of, well, environmental, that's one of the key factors of that. And then people in terms of like purpose and work and things like that, right? If you're in that survival mode, it's hard to think about what's next and all that good stuff, versus like, when's the next paycheck coming in, and where's my next meal gonna come from, that sort of thing, even to that level. But so you got into HR and we're doing that sort of work, and then how did kind of the health component come into the mix?
Yeah, so that's been pretty consistent throughout my life as well. I see that clearly, like at least in the fitness and the fitness community piece. And so it was kind of, I think I was maybe unconsciously pursuing a hobby as a career.
Okay.
I think not a hobby, but a sort of a way of life almost. That had been consistent throughout my life. So it was always, I don't know, it kind of always came back to it. So, when somebody would ask me about my ideal day, or, my vision for my ideal life kind of thing, it would always have this, like, doing yoga in the morning. I'm doing, I'm doing all of these things that are related to wellness, because that's where I feel, that's what I feel is so important to have as part of the, daily routine, as just part of life. It's just that to me is a quality of life thing. And so there's so many ways that I pursued that. Like throughout my career, I was part of a capoeira group. That was a really big deal.
Sorry, what is that?
Capoeira. It's a Brazilian martial art.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the early days. I think more people know about it now, but in the early days, it was 20 years ago when I was doing my master's. That actually led me to go to Brazil for a year and train in capoeira for a year. So it was just
or do anything.
No, it doesn't. You don't really compete. You just kind of, it's like a community. You play music. There's the circle, and then you sort of we call it play instead of fight.
Yeah, sure.
It's a dance fight, another artistic sport, and so that was something I did during my master's. So it was always kind of consistent throughout my life. It's the way that I live, is that, I'm always part of a fitness community. So I guess I kind of pursued alongside whatever I was doing. I did yoga teacher training. I did Zumba instruction at one point. I did Pilates training early on, in my early days. So I just kind of was, and then I became a personal trainer. So I was consistently involved in fitness and health and that world, in one way or another throughout my life. And I thought, well, I should just work in this field.
Sure.
Clearly it's consistent. And it's something that I highly value and I want in my life. So if I can do this, then wonderful. What was missing, I later learned when I was I had an aha moment when I was in my career coaching program at George Brown, where we did an assessment, and I realized there was something missing from that as well. It was I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't quite right. Like, it wasn't quite something that had that staying power, that sustainability. I think I needed it in my life, but maybe not that much. Sure. So the intensity of the interest wasn't there to support a full-time kind of career, as well as the fact that I learned that I'm a thinker helper. So the realistic, as a Holland Codes, you would say, the realistic hands-on sort of nature of fitness work was missing that thinking helping piece, where I like to use my brain to help people solve problems. And that ultimately brings me challenge and complexity in a way that I need in order to feel good about the work that I'm doing. So I learned that nuance of, okay, well, I'll try this. And I did it for quite a few years, actually. And it offered me that flexibility that I needed. And it offered me that, opportunity to be part of fitness communities and to help people to get from surviving to thriving, to get to learn, to build confidence, to learn new skills. I mean, that's ultimately, those are other themes in my life as well. But it wasn't quite right. And so it was lots of career exploration. I realize now I'm saying that all this, I'm just like, wow, my whole life has just been career exploration.
Yeah, and part of it is it's kind of sharing your experiences with others, right? Because you could say, "Hey, been there, done that." I know what you're going through because I experienced it too. So I think that's definitely valuable in that whole experience. So sounds like that health was kind of that anchor, that underlying thing that was always there, the undercurrent, whether you realized it or not. But what happened to, or where is kind of the art and the environmental side? Are those two still in play, or are those just chapters of your life and like, nah, those are now closed, or might they resurface later on?
Yeah, so I think now I do occasionally help people who are in the environmental field or looking for
Okay.
employment in the environmental field. So that does sometimes it's kind of an area that I have specialized knowledge of. So it does kind of play in occasionally. Um, the COVID has really kind of put a damper on all
Fair
of
enough.
my various activities, let's say, that I would supplement my career with. So I think for my complete picture, it really is about having the wellness component, and then also so health and wellness are, and that where they meet career. I think those are the two major areas that need to be present. And then everything else is kind of bonus. So I kind of sub it in and sub it out. But those are sort of my foundational components, which I've discovered as essential to me, just sort of feeling like it's a complete picture.
Cool.
Yeah.
So right now you're currently building kind of the wellness and career coaching business, and you have a bunch of programs that you're putting together. We're working on one program right now. But what are some of the other kind of future aspirations or different things that you want to be able to accomplish in the near or longer term future?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things. I realize I've always had, and I know you do this as well, Luki, the running like sort of a consistent group that helps. So something that I've been wanting. So in the future, I'll state it this way, I will create a group for single mothers who are looking to create portfolio careers that allow them to support raising their children, being present, and not having to, kind of sustain draining full-time work in order to make ends meet. That's an experience that I've had, and I feel like that's really an area that needs a lot more support. So that's something that's kind of I'd like to put out there as something I'd like to create. For Work Sapien, I will be producing 2 courses over the course of this year. One is called the Career Decision Accelerator, and that's all about creating personal decision-making criteria for career decisions that take place over the course of your career. So it's having a way of making stress-free decisions, because I know I've been in the presence of many people who have been very stressed out about specific career decisions, and there are certainly ways, especially with those time-pressured ones, to create systems that are very much a reflection of your truth, your values, your strengths, everything that you bring and that you need at this point in your life, and just a little bit about getting at our intuition and bias, and the ways that things that influence emotional decision making, the things that get to lead us astray. Not that intuition does. Intuition is certainly very important.
Sure.
But the research piece combined with intuition is generally what the course is all about. And then I also am building a course around health competencies for career success.
Okay.
So it's learning how to work in a way which is self-driven. So there's the organizational's responsibility, to kind of create an environment and a culture that supports your health. And then it's our responsibility to create habits and to check in and to pivot and to realign as necessary throughout the course of our career. So it's really about this developing the competencies around that. And that will be more of a group coaching program that will be beginning in September of this year.
It's great. Yeah, looking forward to see all that come to fruition and see how all of it works out. But yeah, so as we start to kind of wrap things up, if you were to be able to kind of give yourself, so young Jenn, some SWIKE, the stuff she wished she knew earlier, in various stages of kind of pivotal moments in your career. So maybe that transition out of skating into environmental, into HR, into coaching or whatever. What are some of the things, maybe 1, 2, 3 things that you would share with yourself that you wish you knew earlier?
Yeah, so I guess if I was to talk to younger Jenn, who I don't think stressed out too much about this stuff, about the future orientation. I enjoy talking about the future, but I'm also very naturally kind of present in my world. One thing is that life is a work in progress. And so it's this idea that, we don't have to arrive necessarily at a finish line. It's all about the journey. And I think that's something that I really didn't get until, about 5 years ago or so. So that the journey is where all of the magic is, where all the joy is, where all the learning and the growing happens. When you arrive, it's just kind of a bonus. That's not where the feelings, the good feelings and the gratification comes from. It's really about all everything that happens along the way. So figuring out how to enjoy the process, huge. I'm still figuring that out.
Sure.
And it's okay to change your mind, kind of along those lines, in that the world, I think, especially at a young age for me, I got this idea that you got to be one thing.
Right.
And if you don't figure out that one thing, then you're lost. And you get labeled lost. And I think I remember my dad telling me that once. You sound really lost. I was like, oh, so offended. So this idea that that you can make a decision, you can pursue it, and then you get more information. It's an exploration process, and then with that information, you can make better informed decisions and move it in a different direction, in a more customized direction as you go. And that's it. It's just you work with what you have ultimately. And then I think the third thing would be that the ultimate career is a customized career. Sure. I really believe that is that looking for it's kind of like looking for that fit is a lot is as you kind of get to know yourself as an adult and you start to see sort of what works, what doesn't. If you can take that knowledge and bring together, especially in the gig economy, there's more opportunity than ever to customize. So to bring in the proportions of what you need. So my 2 big proportions are career and health, right. Work. And so if you can figure out what those proportions are and then design a career that is really about, is really built on, the pieces of the pie that you need, that you understand you need, then that's sustainability. That's the key to being able to have some staying power, some longevity in what you do. But then up to the point where it's time to shed and be called in a new direction, which is totally okay as well. But yeah, that customization piece is something that I think I wish I knew earlier.
Yeah. I think that the common threads that I find between the 3 are more of really finding out finding out who you are and all the different pieces that make you who you are. A lot of people are out there trying to fit into a mold and becoming something because they're supposed to or whatever. They find that one thing because everyone has that one thing, right? So we're all supposed to go in that one direction. But actually, the world has changed so much where it's not one thing. Where yeah, in our grandparents or parents' day, like someone worked for a company for 20, 40 years, and that was normal. But now it's like, wow, when I was at my old job, the fact that I was there for like 12 years, like, oh my gosh, you're like the senior citizen of the group because like who stays here for more than a decade? And people seem to be moving around even more so, and that's become more commonplace. And that doesn't mean that you can't stay at a place. It's just that there are much more options, and to have these kind of customized career paths is more pervasive because again, back in our parents' days, you really didn't have those options, right? There weren't that much flexibility. Like the gig economy, the internet itself that enables all of this stuff. It wasn't even possible. Like when the lights were out, they were out, right? You couldn't go and start a second job after you got home, right? But now that stuff's a possibility. So I love it how you're also looking to empower kind of single mothers and help folks with their career path and stuff, because I think that's phenomenal, amazing. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing your SIWIKE and your insights and your story. And I would love to have you back and maybe discuss a couple of the other topics in a little bit more detail and then kind of decompose and dissect and just have some good conversations around any of those topics. So yeah,
I can talk about this forever.
I'm sure we could. So, are there any parting words that you'd want to share with folks before we head off?
No, I think just be brave. That's my theme this month. Just be brave in whatever you do. And it will lead to good things.
That's awesome. So thanks so much, Jenn, for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you in a future episode.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.